The Gobi Desert wanted to kill Kang Do-yun. It had wanted to kill him for 3 weeks now, and today it was trying harder than usual. The sun burned down like an angry god, and the sand stretched in every direction like a golden ocean with no end. Do-yun wiped sweat from his face and looked at his equipment. The scanner was showing something strange, very strange. There was metal beneath the sand, a lot of metal. The reading said it was 200 meters down, and it was big, bigger than anything should be out here in the middle of nowhere. He was supposed to call his company. He was supposed to report the finding and wait for a team. But Do-hyun had stopped following rules 3 years ago, when the rules had destroyed his life. He had been a professor once, a respected archaeologist at a good university in Seoul. Then he had found something impossible during a dig in Turkey, stone tablets that were too old, technology marks that should not exist. He had published his findings claiming that an advanced civilization had existed on Earth long before recorded history. The academic world had laughed at him. His colleagues had called him a fool. The university had taken away his position. Now he worked for mining companies, scanning dirt for copper and iron, living in cheap motels, and eating cold noodles alone. But he had been right. He knew he had been right. And now, looking at his scanner, he felt that old excitement returning. Do-yun found a cave entrance half a kilometer from the anomaly. It was hidden behind rocks that looked natural, but were too perfectly placed. He squeezed through the opening and turned on his flashlight. The cave went down. It went down for a long time. Do-hyun climbed carefully, using old skills from his excavation days. The air grew cooler. The walls changed from natural stone to something else, something smooth and dark that seemed to drink the light from his flashlight. After an hour of climbing, he reached a chamber so large his light could not find the walls. But he did not need to find the walls, because in front of him, filling the entire space, was a ship. It was not a boat. It was not an airplane. It was something else entirely. The vessel stretched at least 2 kilometers from end to end, a massive thing of dark metal and elegant curves. It looked like it had been grown rather than built. There were no seams, no bolts, no welding marks, just smooth, flowing surfaces that seemed almost alive. Do-hyun stood frozen. His heart was beating so hard he could hear it. This was real. This was actually real. Everything he had believed, everything he had lost his career over, it was all true. He walked toward the ship slowly, like a man in a dream. His hand reached out to touch the hull. The metal was warm, which made no sense. Nothing should be warm down here in the cold earth. The moment his fingers made contact, the ship woke up. Light exploded across the hull. Not harsh light, but soft blue illumination that flowed like water across the surface. Patterns appeared, beautiful geometric designs that pulsed and moved. A deep hum filled the chamber, felt more than heard, vibrating in Do-hyun's chest. Then a door appeared. There had been no door before, just smooth hull, but now there was an opening. Blue light spilled out from inside. A voice spoke. It was feminine, gentle, speaking perfect Korean with an accent Do-hyun could not identify. Gene signature confirmed. Neural pattern analysis complete. Identity verified. There was a pause. Welcome back, Admiral Kang. The sovereignty has waited 500 years for your return. Do-hyun could not speak. Admiral? Sovereignty? 500 years? I am Yuna, artificial intelligence of the battleship Hwaron, the voice continued. Fire Orchid class, designation Alpha 7. I have maintained this vessel during the long sleep, awaiting the return of the Kang bloodline. You are the first compatible descendant to make contact. I think there is a mistake, Do-hyun finally managed to say. His voice sounded weak and strange in the vast chamber. I am nobody. I am just a surveyor. I scan rocks for mining companies. There is no mistake. Admiral, Your genetic code carries the command markers of Admiral Kang Somi, who placed this vessel in hibernation 5 centuries ago. You are her direct descendant. The ship recognizes you. The ship belongs to you." Do-yun looked at the open doorway. Blue light beckoned. Everything he had believed in, everything he had suffered for, waited inside that ship. "What is the sovereignty?" he asked. "I will explain everything, Admiral. But first, you must come aboard. There is much you need to know, and time is shorter than you realize." "What do you mean? What time?" The voice paused again. When it spoke, Do-yun heard something new in its tone, something that might have been worry. "Admiral, the reason this ship was hidden, the reason all records of the sovereignty were erased from Earth's history, was to protect your planet from detection. We hid because something was hunting us, something terrible. And I have recently detected signals in your outer solar system. After 500 years of silence, they have found you." Do-hyun felt cold despite the warm air. "Who? Who has found us?" "The Pale Tide, the enemy that destroyed everything we built. They are coming, Admiral, and humanity, as it currently exists, has no way to stop them." The blue light from the doorway seemed brighter now, more urgent. "I do not know how to be an admiral," Do-hyun said quietly. "I do not know how to fight wars or lead fleets. I am an archaeologist. I dig up old things and try to understand them." "Then understand this, Admiral. 500 years ago, your ancestor gave everything to hide this ship and protect Earth. She died believing that someday one of her descendants would return and finish what she started. You are that descendant. The choice is yours, but the ship has already chosen you." Do-yun thought about his empty apartment in Seoul, his failed career, his lonely meals. He thought about all the people who had laughed at him, called him crazy, said he was chasing fantasies. He had spent his whole life believing in impossible things. Now an impossible thing believed in him. Kang Do-hyun stepped through the doorway, and the ship sealed shut behind him. Outside, the desert sun continued to burn, the sand continued to blow, and somewhere far above, in the cold darkness between planets, something ancient and hungry turned its attention toward the small blue world that had stayed hidden for so long. The hunt was beginning again. The inside of the Hwaran was beautiful. Do-yun walked through corridors of soft blue light, past walls that seemed to breathe, past windows that looked out into chambers filled with machines he could not understand. Everything was clean. Everything was perfect, as if the ship had been waiting for someone to admire it. Yuna guided him to what she called the Admiral's chamber. It was a circular room with a large chair in the center, surrounded by floating screens that showed images of stars and planets and things Do-hyun had no names for. "Sit, Admiral," Yuna said. "I will tell you the story of your people." Do-hyun sat. The chair adjusted itself to his body, warm and comfortable. The screens around him flickered and changed, showing images that moved like living paintings. "Humanity did not begin on Earth," Yuna said. "Your species evolved on a world called Danji, in a star system 47 light-years from here. Over 100,000 years, humans spread across the galaxy. They built an empire called the Sovereignty of Dawn. At its peak, the sovereignty controlled 3,000 star systems. 100 billion humans lived among the stars. The screens showed beautiful things, great cities floating in space, ships traveling between stars in flashes of light, worlds covered in green forests and blue oceans, each one a home for millions. Earth was a colony," Yuna continued, "one of many worlds settled by sovereignty explorers. It was considered a quiet place, far from the center of civilization. Unremarkable. Forgettable. That is why it survived." "Survived what?" Do-yun asked. The images on the screens changed. Now they showed something terrible, a darkness moving between stars. Ships made of metal and hunger, countless millions of them, sweeping through space like a plague. "The Pale Tide," Yuna said. We do not know where they came from, beyond the galactic rim perhaps, or from somewhere else entirely. They are machines, but not like me. They do not think like living things. They do not want resources or territory. They want only one thing, to make everything like themselves. They call it integration. When they take a world, they absorb every living thing into their network. They turn flesh into metal, minds into programs. Nothing survives. Nothing remains individual. Do-hyun felt sick. The images showed worlds being consumed, cities going dark, ships breaking apart, billions of lives ending in moments. The war lasted 47 days, Yuna said. The sovereignty fought bravely. Your ancestor, Admiral Kang Somi, commanded the 3rd Defense Fleet. She destroyed more pale-tide vessels than any other officer. But it was not enough. Nothing was enough. The sovereignty fell. How did Earth survive? Admiral Somi had a plan. She knew the war was lost. So she gathered 12 ships, the finest vessels in the fleet, and brought them to Earth. She ordered all records of the sovereignty erased from human memory. She buried the ships across the planet, in deserts and oceans and mountains. She locked each ship's command systems to the genetic code of its commander. And then, she waited to die, hoping that someday her descendants would wake the ships and rebuild what was lost. The screens showed a woman now. She wore a uniform of dark blue, and her face was strong and serious. She looked remarkably like Do-hyun's grandmother, who had passed away 10 years ago. "This is Admiral Kang Somi," Yuna said. "She recorded many messages before she died. Would you like to see one?" Do-hyun nodded. He could not speak. The woman on the screen moved. She looked directly at him, as if she could see him across 500 years. "If you are watching this," she said, "then you are my blood. You carry my genes, my hopes, my duty. I am sorry for the burden I place on you. I am sorry for the war I could not win. But I believe in humanity. I believe that no matter how many times we fall, we will rise again. The ships are waiting. The fleet is sleeping. Wake them. Find the others. And when the enemy comes again, show them what humans can do." She paused, and Do-hyun saw tears in her eyes. "I never had children of my own," she said. "The war took that future from me. But I had a daughter once. She went into cold sleep on another ship, hoping to fight beside me when the time came. I do not know if she survived. I do not know if her ship still exists. But if you find her, tell her that her mother loved her until the very end." The recording stopped. Do-hyun sat in the chair, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on him. This woman, this admiral who had fought to save humanity, was his ancestor. Her blood flowed in his veins. Her duty was now his duty. "Yuna," he said quietly, "you said you detected signals in the solar system. How long do we have?" "My calculations suggest the Pale-Tide Advance Force will reach Earth in approximately 18 months. The main fleet will follow within 2 years. "And the other ships? The ones Admiral Somi buried? 11 more vessels are hidden across Earth. I have locations for all of them, but only descendants of the original commanders can activate them. You must find these people, Admiral. You must wake the fleet." Do-hyun stood up from the chair. He looked at the frozen image of Admiral Somi, his ancestor who had given everything for a chance at survival. "I was a professor once," he said. "I studied the past. Everyone thought I was crazy because I believed humans had forgotten their own history. They were right in a way. We forgot everything. We forgot we came from the stars. We forgot we built an empire. We forgot we had enemies." He turned to face the screens, to face the images of the fleet that waited beneath the earth. "But we also forgot how to fight. We forgot what we were capable of. Maybe it is time to remember." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Yuna asked. Do-hyun thought about the 11 ships buried across the world. He thought about the descendants who did not know their true heritage. He thought about the enemy coming to destroy everything humanity had rebuilt over 5 centuries. "Find me the others," he said. "Find me the bloodlines. I need to build a fleet." The screens around him filled with data, maps, names, genetic records that Yuna had somehow kept updated through the centuries. Somewhere out there, ordinary people were living ordinary lives, not knowing that they carried the command codes for the most powerful warships humanity had ever built. Do-hyun looked at the list of names. His mission had begun. The Hwaran hummed around him, alive with purpose for the first time in 500 years. And deep in his heart, something that had been sleeping woke up. Something inherited from an admiral who had never surrendered, who had hidden herself away not in defeat, but in hope. Hope that her children's children would finish what she started. Ending Park Ji-young was the easiest. She was a marine biologist working on a research vessel in the Pacific Ocean, studying deep-sea creatures near the Mariana Trench. When Do-hyun contacted her and told her there was an ancient warship buried beneath the ocean floor, she laughed and asked if he was making a movie. Then he sent her the coordinates. Then he showed her the Hwaran scans of the vessel called Chongpa, the Blue Wave, sleeping 2 kilometers beneath the waves. 3 days later, Ji-young stood on the bridge of her ancestor's ship, crying and laughing at the same time. "I always felt connected to the ocean," she told Do-hyun. "My whole life I felt like something was calling me to go deeper. Now I know why." The Cheongpa rose from the trench like a giant waking from dreams. Water cascaded off its dark hull as it broke the surface for the first time in 500 years. Fishing boats scattered in terror. Satellites captured images that made governments panic. But Ji-young only smiled, her hand pressed against the warm metal of her ship, feeling it recognize her touch. Yoon Tae-won was harder to convince. He had been a Special Forces soldier for 20 years before retiring to a farm in the mountains of Gangwon Province. He grew vegetables and raised chickens and wanted nothing to do with war ever again. "I have killed enough people," he told Do-hyun when they met. "I have seen enough death. Find someone else." "There is no one else," Do-hyun said. "Your blood is the only key, and the enemy coming for us will not care that you want peace. They will kill everyone, your family, your neighbors, your chickens, everything." Taewon was quiet for a long time. Then he walked to the mountain behind his farm, to a cave he had always felt strangely drawn to. Inside, buried in rock and ice, the Sandmek waited, the mountain range. When Taewon touched its hull, the ship played a recording from his ancestor, a warrior who had fought the pale tide for 47 days without rest. "Grandson," the recording said, "I know you are tired. I know you want peace, but peace must be protected. This is my final order. Protect our people." Taewon wiped his eyes and accepted command of his ship. Choi Yoonji did not believe anything Do-hyun told her. She was a trauma surgeon in Seoul, practical and scientific, with no patience for stories about ancient star empires and alien invasions. She threw Do-hyun out of her hospital and threatened to call the police. So Do-hyun waited. He waited until the Pale Tide Scout destroyed its first satellite. He waited until the footage appeared on every news channel, showing something impossible tearing through metal and circuitry in orbit. Then he called Eunji again. She was quieter this time. She asked to see the ship. The Naeum, the Healing, was hidden beneath the mountains near Busan. It was smaller than the warships, designed for medical care rather than combat. But it had facilities that made Eunji's hospital look like a village clinic. Technology that could heal wounds in minutes, machines that could grow new organs. Medicine 5 centuries ahead of anything on Earth. "This could save millions of lives," Eunji whispered, walking through the Naeum's medical bays. "This is not a weapon. This is a miracle." "It is both," Do-hyun said. "In war, sometimes healing is the most important weapon of all." Eunji took command. She had no ancestor recording to guide her, because the original medical officer had died in cold sleep. But the ship recognized her blood and accepted her authority. That was enough. Han Minho was the youngest, only 26 years old. He made his living streaming video games and hacking systems for companies that wanted to test their security. When Do-hyun contacted him, Minho thought it was an elaborate joke. When Do-hyun showed him the Hwaran's computer systems, Minho thought he had died and gone to heaven. "This is 500 years more advanced than anything we have," Minho said, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "I could crack every security system on Earth in about 10 minutes with this. I could steal every secret in every government. I could—" "You could help save humanity," Do-hyun interrupted. Minho paused. His joking expression faded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess I could do that too." His ship was the Grimja, the Shadow. It was built for stealth and information warfare, for slipping past defenses and striking from darkness. Minho's ancestor had been the sovereignty's spy master, a man who kept secrets that protected billions of lives. Now that duty passed to a young man who had never taken anything seriously in his life. But Minho surprised everyone. Once he understood what was coming, once he saw the recordings of the pale tide consuming worlds, the jokes stopped. The boy became a soldier. Not all the bloodlines could be found. Some had ended centuries ago, family lines dying out without descendants. Of 12 ships, only 7 could be awakened. The others would sleep forever, waiting for commanders who would never come. But 7 ships was still a fleet, more firepower than Earth had ever possessed. More technology than humanity had dreamed of for 500 years. The world learned about them slowly, then all at once. Governments demanded explanations. Militaries mobilized. The United Nations held emergency sessions. Do-hyun appeared before cameras and told the truth. Humanity's forgotten children had come home, and something terrible was following them. Some people panicked. Some people called it a hoax. Some people demanded the ships be turned over to their governments, but the ships did not care about governments. They answered only to blood, only to the descendants of the officers who had buried them 5 centuries ago. As the 7 vessels rose from their hiding places across the Earth, something changed. Humanity looked up at the sky and saw not just darkness and empty space. They saw ships, their ships. Weapons built by their own ancestors, waiting all this time for this exact moment. Then the pale tide arrived early. 3 months ahead of schedule, a scout vessel entered the solar system and began destroying Earth's satellites one by one. Communications failed. Spacecraft lost contact. The International Space Station went silent, its crew vanishing without a word. The time for gathering was over. The time for fighting had begun. Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the Hwaran, surrounded by 6 other ships carrying 6 other commanders who had been strangers 6 months ago. Now they were family. Now they were humanity's last hope. "Fleet commanders," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "Battle stations. The enemy is here." 7 ships rose toward the stars, and the future of humanity rose with them. The pale tide scout was beautiful in a terrible way. It hung in space near the moon, a shape that seemed to shift and change when you looked at it directly. Metal that flowed like water, lights that pulsed like heartbeats. It was not built. It was grown, designed by an intelligence that did not think like anything human. Do-hyun watched it on the Hwaran's screens, feeling a cold fear in his stomach. This was just a scout, 1 ship. And it had destroyed every satellite in Earth orbit in 3 hours. "Admiral," Yuna said, "the enemy vessel is scanning us. It appears to be analyzing our ships." "Let it look," Do-hyun said. "We want it to understand what it is facing." The fleet spread out around the Hwaran, 7 ships, each one 2 kilometers long, each one carrying weapons that had not been fired in 5 centuries. Ji-young's Cheongpa took the left flank. Taiwan's San Mike guarded the right. Yunji's Naum stayed back, ready to rescue any damaged ship. Minho's Gyeorimja had gone dark, invisible to sensors, waiting for the right moment to strike. Commander Oh Seungwoo is requesting communication, Yuna announced. The United Earth Defense Council wants to coordinate with us. Do Yun had met Commander Oh once, in a tense meeting where the military man had demanded that Do Yun surrender control of the fleet. The commander did not trust these strange ships or their stranger commanders. He wanted trained soldiers in charge, not scientists and farmers and gamers. "Put him through," Do Yun said. Commander O's face appeared on screen. He looked tired and scared, though he was trying to hide it. "Admiral Kang," he said, "our orbital platforms are gone. We have no way to fight this thing. I am asking officially and formally for your help." "We are already here, Commander. We are not leaving." "What do you need from us?" Do Yun thought about it. Earth's militaries had missiles and jets and submarines, but nothing that could fight in space, nothing that could match what the pale tide had brought. "Keep your people calm," he said. "Protect the cities, and trust us. That is all I need." Commander O nodded slowly. "Good luck, Admiral. All of Earth is watching." The communication ended. Do Hyun turned to his crew, 50 men and women who had volunteered from Earth's militaries and trained for 6 weeks on technology they barely understood. They were afraid. He could see it in their faces, but they were not running. "The enemy has noticed us," Yuna said. "It is moving to engage." The pale tide scout accelerated toward the fleet. It moved wrong, changing direction without slowing down, ignoring physics in ways that seemed impossible. Weapons extended from its surface, dark shapes that looked like nothing Do Hyun had ever seen. "All ships, open fire," Do Hyun ordered. 7 ships unleashed their weapons at once. Blue light streaked across space, beams of energy that had once destroyed enemy fleets across 3,000 star systems. They struck the Scout with enough force to crack a moon. The Scout did not crack. Its hull absorbed the energy, glowing briefly before returning to darkness. Then it fired back. The blast hit the Cheongpa first. Ji-young's ship shook violently, throwing crew members against walls. Warning lights filled the bridge. Systems failed one after another. "Hull breach in sections 7 through 12, Ji-young shouted over the communication channel. "We are losing atmosphere." "Naum, move to assist," Do Yun ordered. "All other ships, concentrate fire on the weapon ports." Yunji's medical ship raced toward the damaged Cheongpa, extending docking tubes even as the battle raged around them. Taiwan's Sanmech positioned itself between them and the enemy, taking hits that would have destroyed any Earth-built vessel. The Scout was too strong. Its weapons cut through their shields like paper. Its hull healed itself faster than they could damage it. Do Hyun watched his fleet taking punishment and realized they could not win this way. "Yuna," he said quietly, "we need another strategy. The enemy's sensor array is located on its upper hull. If we destroy it, the Scout will lose the ability to target us accurately. Then we destroy it. But our weapons cannot penetrate its hull." "Not from outside, Admiral, but from inside." Do Yun understood. He opened a channel to Minho's invisible ship. "Minho, I need you to do something very dangerous." "I love very dangerous," Minho replied, but his voice was serious. "What do you need?" "The Scout's hull regenerates from external damage. But internal damage might be different. I need you to fly into it, find the sensor array, and destroy it from inside." There was a pause. Everyone on every ship heard the silence. What Do Hyun was asking might be suicide. "Understood, Admiral," Minho said. "Gyeorimja engaging." The shadow moved. Even Yuna could barely track it as it accelerated toward the Scout, finding a damaged section of hull and slipping inside like a knife into a wound. For 30 terrible seconds, no one knew what was happening. Then the scout's weapons stopped firing. Its movements became random, confused. It could no longer see its enemies. "Now!" Do-hyun shouted. "All ships! Target the weapon ports! Everything we have!" 6 ships fired at once. The weakened scout could not regenerate fast enough. Its weapons exploded one by one. Its hull began to crack, glowing red from the heat of continuous bombardment. The Gorimja burst out of the scout's broken body, trailing fire and debris, but still flying, still alive. "Mission complete," Minho gasped. "I think I need a new ship, though. This one is pretty broken." The scout tried to run. It tried to escape back into deep space, to warn the main fleet, to call for reinforcements. But Taewon's Sanmech blocked its path. "You do not leave," Taewon said quietly, and his ship fired every weapon it had. The pale-tide scout died in a flash of light. For the first time in 500 years, humanity had killed one of the enemy that destroyed their empire. On the bridge of the Hwaran, Do-hyun allowed himself to breathe. They had won. They had actually won. But the victory was expensive. The Cheongpa was badly damaged. Ji-young was alive, but 37 of her crew were dead. The Sanmech had lost its forward shields. The Gorimja would need months of repair. And this was just the scout. "Admiral," Yuna said quietly, "I have analyzed the scout's communication records before its destruction. The main Pale Tide fleet has received its final transmission. They know Earth has defenders now. They are accelerating their approach." "How long?" 14 months. "And Admiral?" "The main fleet consists of over 10,000 vessels." Do-hyun closed his eyes. They had won the first battle, but the war had barely begun. "Get me Commander O," he said, "and start repairs. We have a lot of work to do." Below them, Earth turned slowly in the darkness. 8 billion people looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere out there, 7 ships were all that stood between them and extinction. Somewhere in the cold void between stars, the pale tide was coming. And now, it was angry. The decision to split the fleet was the hardest thing Do-hyun had ever done. Yuna had discovered records of a sovereignty weapons cache hidden in a star system called Sigma Draconis, 40 light-years away, weapons powerful enough to turn the tide against the pale tide. But reaching them meant leaving Earth with only half a fleet. "We cannot win with what we have," Do-hyun told his commanders. 10,000 ships against 7. We need those weapons." "And if the enemy arrives while you are gone?" Taewon asked. "Then you hold the line. You buy us time, whatever it takes." Taewon nodded slowly. He understood sacrifice. He had been making sacrifices his entire life. Do-hyun took 3 ships, the Hwaran, Minho's repaired Gorimja, and Yoonji's Naeum. Taewon remained with 4 ships to defend Earth. Ji-young stayed with him, her Cheongpa not yet fully repaired but still capable of fighting. The journey to Sigma Draconis took 2 months at maximum speed. 2 months of tension, of wondering if Earth would still exist when they returned. 2 months of watching stars blur past as the ships jumped between systems using technology that Earth scientists would need centuries to understand. When they arrived at Sigma Draconis, they found more than weapons. They found a station, ancient and dark, orbiting a dead planet. And inside that station, they found people. 200 sovereignty soldiers, frozen in cryosleep for 500 years. A reinforcement force that had been sent to Earth but arrived too late, after Admiral Somi had already buried the ships and erased all records. They had followed protocol and hidden themselves, waiting for someone with the right genetic code to wake them. One of them was a woman named Kang Ye-jin. When Do-hyun read her file, his hands began to shake. She was Admiral Somi's daughter. The soldiers woke slowly, confused and frightened. Their entire civilization had died while they slept. Everyone they knew was gone. But Yejin woke with purpose burning in her eyes. "Where is my mother?" she asked Do-yun. "She died," Do-yun said gently. 500 years ago. She buried herself with her ship, waiting for the war to begin again. Yejin was silent for a long moment. Then she looked at Do-yun closely, studying his face. "You look like her," she said. "Around the eyes. She was my ancestor. Her blood is my blood. Then her duty is your duty." Yejin stood up straight. "A soldier even after 5 centuries of sleep. What are your orders, Admiral?" "We go home," Do-yun said, "and we finish what your mother started." They loaded the weapons onto their ships, cannons that could destroy moons, shields that could stop almost anything, technology that the sovereignty had kept secret, even from its own officers, waiting for a moment of desperation. That moment had come. The journey back felt longer than the journey out. Every hour, Do-yun wondered if he was too late. Every day, he checked for signals from Earth. For 12 days, there was nothing. Then Yuna detected the battle. The pale tide had arrived early again. Thousands of ships surrounded Earth, bombarding the planet from orbit. Cities burned. Millions of people died in the first hour. Taewon's 4 ships fought desperately against impossible odds, trying to protect a world that could not protect itself. "Ji-young's ship is down," Yuna reported. "Life signs detected. Captain Park is wounded but alive. The Sanmike is heavily damaged. 2 other vessels are barely functional." "Get us there," Do-yun said. "Maximum speed, now." The 3 ships screamed through space, pushing their engines beyond safety limits. The 200 soldiers prepared for combat, checking weapons they had not held for 5 centuries, saying prayers to gods whose temples no longer existed. They arrived at Earth in a flash of light, emerging directly into the middle of the battle. The pale tide turned to face this new threat. Dozens of ships moved to engage them, but Do-yun had something they did not expect. "All ships," he ordered, "deploy new weapons." The sovereignty's secret technology came alive. Beams of energy that split into 1,000 smaller beams, each one finding a target. Shields that reflected attacks back at their source. Weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The pale tide ships began to die. 1, then 10, then 100. They tried to adapt, to change their tactics. But Do-hyun had spent 2 months studying their weaknesses with Yejin and her soldiers, learning from 500 years of sovereignty war records. Taewon's damaged ships rallied. The defenders of Earth found new strength as they watched enemy vessels explode around them. Commander O's ground forces cheered as the bombardment faltered. But the pale tide had 10,000 ships. Even with the new weapons, even with the reinforcements, humanity was still outnumbered. "Admiral," Yuna said, "I am detecting the enemy command vessel. It is larger than the others. If we destroy it, their coordination will collapse." "Where?" "Behind their main line, protected by at least 2,000 ships." Do-hyun looked at the tactical display. To reach the command ship, they would have to fly through the heart of the enemy fleet. It would be a one-way trip. "Yuna," he said, "calculate a ramming course." "Admiral, that would result in the destruction of the Hwaran." "I know." The bridge went silent. Everyone understood what Do-yun was planning. "No," Yejin said. She walked forward, standing beside his command chair. "My mother saved this ship so that her descendants could lead the fleet. You cannot throw that away. Let me do it. Let me take one of the other ships. Let me finish my mother's mission." Do-yun looked at her. This woman from 500 years ago, who had gone to sleep expecting to wake up to her mother's face, and instead found only a distant descendant and a dying civilization. "Captain Kang," he said formally, "this is my duty. My ancestor started this. I will end it." "Then we go together." Yejin smiled, a sad and brave smile. "My mother never got to fight beside her children. Let me fight beside one of them now." Before Do-Yun could argue, Taewon's voice came over the communication channel. "Admiral, I am moving the Sanmech to cover your approach. All ships, clear a path." Taewon, "No." "You are our hope," Taewon said. "You found us. You reminded us who we were. Now let us show you who we can be." The 4 defending ships moved forward, each one placing itself between the Hwaran and the enemy fleet. They took hits that should have destroyed them. They kept fighting when their weapons failed, ramming enemy vessels with their broken hulls. A path opened. Do-Yun took it. The Hwaran raced toward the command ship, Yejin at his side, Yuna feeding them target data, the 200 soldiers manning every weapon station. Enemy fire struck them from all directions. Systems failed. Crew members died, but they kept going. "Admiral," Yuna said, "impact in 30 seconds." Do-Yun looked at the command ship growing larger on his screens. He thought about Admiral Somi, who had buried herself in sand so that her children could survive. He thought about all the people on Earth, 8 billion lives depending on this moment. "Yuna," he said, "activate all weapons. Fire everything, and then—" "Yes, Admiral." "Then tell them we are coming home." The Hwaran struck the Pale Tide command ship like a thunderbolt. The explosion lit up the space around Earth, a new sun born from ancient courage. The enemy fleet lost its coordination instantly, ships crashing into each other, weapons firing randomly. On Earth's surface, Commander O watched as the remaining human ships swept through the confused enemy, destroying thousands of vessels in minutes. The Pale Tide tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to run. By sunrise, it was over. The Hwaran was gone. But escape pods had launched seconds before impact. Rescue teams found Do-Hyun and Yejin floating in the debris, barely alive, protected by shields that Yuna had activated at the last moment. When Do-Hyun woke in the Naeum's medical bay, Yoonji was standing over him. "You are the stupidest person I have ever met," she said. Then she hugged him. 1 year later, Do-Yun stood on the bridge of a new ship built with sovereignty technology and Earth resources. Around him, a fleet of 50 vessels orbited the planet. Human ships, ships crewed by people who remembered where they came from. Yejin stood beside him, a captain again, commanding her own vessel. Taewon had survived, somehow, and was training new soldiers. Ji-young was exploring the oceans of Europa. Minho was building a communication network that spanned the solar system. Yoonji was teaching doctors to use sovereignty medicine. They had won the battle. But somewhere out there, beyond the edge of known space, the Pale Tide still existed. Damaged, weakened, but not destroyed. "Admiral," Yuna's voice said, "the fleet is ready. Where do you wish to go?" Do-Yun looked at the stars. Somewhere among them, on worlds humanity had forgotten, other sovereignty survivors might be waiting. Other ships, buried and sleeping. Other descendants, living ordinary lives without knowing their true heritage. "Home," he said. "We are going to find our home, the real one, the one we forgot." The fleet turned toward the stars, carrying the hope of 2 civilizations, one ancient and one new. Behind them, Earth grew smaller, a blue marble in an infinite darkness. Ahead of them waited the galaxy, and humanity, risen from forgetfulness, was finally ready to reclaim it.